This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. Hello, everybody. Digimon Adventure. Oh, awesome. Nice job. All right. Yeah, let me just have a look through all these and then I'll get back to you, or I'll let you know my thoughts. So far, the thoughts are really good, right? It seems like for the most part, you've got like this mannequin's looking really great. The poses are looking epic. Um, I think just like with the other ones, we can push the shape design, but it seems like you're starting to do that with these. Um, Let me have a look here. Okay, so far the only comments in my mind, what I think needs to be worked on is we can just now push things to the next level. So that would be in terms of things like lighting, which we're going to talk about in a week. Um, I think you're doing a great job of exaggerating the pose. Let's see what else. Maybe some overlaps and stuff in the line work. Now that we talked about anatomy, um, some examples. Let me zoom in on this. And this is more of like, it's not really critiquing because it doesn't need, it's not as though you did something wrong, but I think there's certain areas like, let's say, like here with the legs and stuff, we can start to include some of the overlap from the anatomy a little bit. So for example, that line can come inside the silhouette. Can work on that shape design, add a little bit of variation, right? We talked about shape design in terms of in order to incorporate the anatomy, as it's closer to the waist, we're going to have rounder shapes that kind of taper out. You can use sharper shapes for the knees and such. I saw you doing that in the later exercises, so I think for the most part you've got a good idea here. So not too bad at all. Seems like the mannequins are nice and simple. Uh, let's see. I think we can even just push some of these a little bit more, like for this. Um, imagine pushing those angles even more so we get more twist. Maybe the head can be tilted more, right? Just imagine like twisting out a rag to sort of just keep adding more and more tension. Also, I think it would be nice to contrast this bent leg to actually have this one a little bit more extended. Even if that's not what the pose was doing, I think we can exaggerate that a bit. That feels a little more dramatic. Oops.
Hey James,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
thought I'd have a quick question about like
Sure.
how pushing the pose thing, because I was looking at like sort of footage to make these poses,
Hmm.
and I was wondering sort of like in terms of animation, the idea that we push the key poses as in the in-betweens or sort of whatever, because I always find like surely there's some sort of in-between where things are not pushed, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say that in-betweens are whatever. I think the idea is like your key poses are how you figure out what you're going to be doing. That's kind of setting the map for what's going on. And you could sort of think of the in-betweens as how you transition between those key poses. But for example, this might get too much into animation, but I might do, if let's say we're looking at a timing chart, we're going from A to B, I might do a bunch of drawings that are really, really close to pose A, and then just slowly twist the body. That's called a slow out. And so all of those poses, 1, 2, 3, 4, are all going to be extremely close to that key pose. And then we might have a quick jump to the next key pose. So I don't think like one of the differences between a live action and animation is live action will often just sort of look like this, where everything is evenly spaced, A to B. Whereas animation, we're really playing with that timing, and you can emphasize that key pose by bringing those in-betweens closer to the key pose. So I would say if you just come up with a key pose that's got a lot of tension and energy into it, you want to leave that on screen or on camera for as long as you can. About how you add tension, or sorry, add energy to it. Like I said, you can do that by adding more tension to the body. So, increasing the angle of twist between the rib cage and pelvis, or doing things like changing the camera angle really pushes that. So this was the initial angle of the rib cage and the pelvis, right? You can just imagine rotating this up. Sorry, there's not a lot of room here, but just rotating that rib cage even more. So you're just stepping up the amount of twisting that's happening.
When you're picturing rotating, is it easier to rotate the character or the camera? Like in your head when they're like, oh, this scene, I need to change something.
Neither are easier. They're both difficult.
So I find like when I'm doing these like rotations, I'm always in my head picturing the character rotating as opposed to me going around the character.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm sort of thinking about it differently because like if I was going to animate it and I was rotating the camera, I would change the scale of the character, right? Whereas if I'm just keeping the scale the same and the character's rotating, then I'm not thinking about it as the camera rotating. I'm thinking about it as the character rotating. I don't think either of those is going to make it easier or less easy to draw, though. I don't think that's like one of those things that would help all that much.
What do you mean when the scale changes?
Well, like let's say we have a platform, right? And here's our character. And instead of the camera rotating around, staying the same distance, maybe the camera will be here, but then it rotates and gets closer to the character as it's rotating.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Right,
okay.
So the character is going to get bigger as it pans across, or as the camera rotates. So I generally am only going to be thinking about a camera rotation if the scale of the character is changing. Or like that's
okay.
Pretty much the only time I would.
You want to do it.
Yeah, I think because like that's going to make it way more interesting, and unless you're doing like a character turnaround just for practice, yeah, I wouldn't think about it in another way. All right, let's keep looking here.
Just like another question I had, like,
sure.
Because since we're still working with like simple mannequins and stuff, I suppose I wasn't sure how to like convert this into more proper, I guess, on model characters later on down the line. But is that something that I don't know, it's just a practice thing, or how?
Yeah,
I don't see how the conversion makes sense, I guess.
I can do a quick little demo. So let me go into Clip Studio. So let's use my character model I have here, and I'm just going to open up a new. Okay, let's just take one of yours, and we're going to do this so we can see both. I'll do this one. So I kind of think of it like sculpting a little bit, where now you have your sort of base of what the character's doing, and now I'm going to start to cut into that to refine the shapes. So he's got this almost trapezoid-like shape up top, so I'm going to start there. A tapered down trapezoid for the waist, and then his legs are more tapered. So I can start to carve into that shape. So I'd be drawing character details over this mannequin that you have. I'm not doing, a super fancy sketch here, but so my advice, if you're going to do that, get a character model sheet that you like and practice, turning these into a character model sheet. But I generally just draw directly over them because that's what you would be doing in animation, right? You start out with your rough sketch, and then after your rough sketch, then you're going to want to put your character model directly over that. It can be a little challenging. It's not like it's not something that just happens immediately, but it's definitely a skill worth developing. And I think it's like, if you imagine your initial shape that you're drawing is something like this. Okay, imagine cutting into that to find the shape that you want, or if it's a form, you've got to cut into that form to find the shape that you want. Let me pull up something as well. Let me see if I've got some rough sketches. Okay, let's see if I've got the rough pass. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, I included some shapes here, but it's not a lot of information, right? It's pretty loose. And so then what I'll do is over that, start sketching the details and start tweaking things around. You can see I'm really solidifying those shapes, the hair shapes. It's almost like, that it makes sense that rough pass is just a rough estimation of what it's going to look like. I do try to keep the proportions in check, and maybe I'll do a little bit of shape design, but if it's not there, or you're just like trying to go with the energy of the drawing, it doesn't need to be perfect. It does take, like I said, it takes a bit of time to get used to doing that. So my suggestion is take some of your sketches, take character designs that you like, and start drawing over those. But it looks like with these other ones, you're doing a pretty solid job of that. I don't know if that answered the question exactly, but.
I thought that's super helpful. I definitely tried doing that, I think.
Cool. All right, let's see here. This animation is so crazy. Okay, I think you did a great job capturing like a lot of the details, like the way the lines cross over and stuff. I think that came out great. I think we can use maybe even simpler shapes for the hair a little bit. Like, let me start sketching over this a little bit. Even this can be just tapered down to 3 edges. Just keep taking out those details. What else? I think there's even more exaggeration of the proportions. Like if you look at her front view, it's like really thin rectangle to very wide semicircle. So I think you could have gone even thinner there, maybe even add a little overlap. And this like little edge you're putting for the rib cage, I would just simplify that out. Yeah, keep trying to keep those shapes as simple as possible. Maybe even add the jaw in there a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. But it looks like you're doing a pretty solid job here. I think you're doing a great job of getting the anatomy. I think you could have been even more ambitious with tapering. Like your proportions ended up being a little less tall feeling. The way you can do that is take the hip or pelvis and just shift that up a little bit more. So if you shifted the pelvis up to around here, and then those legs like are even longer and they taper down to a really, really solid point. Yeah, and like they're not being shy about those sharp edges. So yeah, keep those shapes nice and sharp and let them taper down. All right, as we get down towards the ankle and the wrist, you want that to be very linear and in this case very thin, right? It's really emphasizing the muscularity of that shape on the calf. Cool. Yeah, and I think a little less, or you can just have like fewer edges on these shapes. So like this silhouette on the back could just be like that. Yeah, so I made that a little bit thinner up top, tapered out wider on the hips, simplified the silhouette. Because if this feels, I mean, I guess they do that sort of flat edge there, but I think it's a little bit of a smoother curve. All right, great work here though. Nice. This one came out great. Yeah, you got the model pretty much on point. Now I think you can just add those final, like you're at a point where you could just add in the remaining character details. The hair, some expressions, that kind of thing. This one's looking particularly good. Was this from a reference model and then you added, or you changed the character model?
Sorry, what's the question again?
Did you do, was this from Pose reference and then you put on the character model?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. And that's kind of a perfect version of, yeah, that's great. There's literally nothing else you could do with this. I mean, it's perfect. So I would just say now we can try to take it to a finish, which we'll talk about that next week. Talk about lighting, things that we can add to, or a little bit of line weight, things that we can do to like fully push this.
Does line weight matter in animation?
It can.
In the sense that everything's digitized, right? At the end.
I disagree, and it can.
Okay.
Yeah, no. In certain types of animation, the line weight is digitized, but then there's certain types where there's very intense line weight. So I would say it really depends on what you want to do. Here, all the line weight is definitely just, like you said, digitized and kind of clean. But in some cases, you want to emphasize different types of lines. So I think it can matter, and it's something that is valuable, especially here. That's a good example of where you would want to an illustration style where you want to use line weight. All right. Let's see. I think with this one, part of what I think we're missing is we started to lose the gesture a bit. Like proportionally, if you look at the shapes of his character design, it's a lot taller than the way you have it. So the waist is up much higher. And it really has these nice longer legs. So I'd use a mannequin that's a little bit more like that. If you want characters to feel taller, just pull their waist up a little bit. That's one way to do it. Don't lose the gesture as well. Remember, this main gesture is this movement to the right here. So we don't want to lose that gesture. Right? You started including more details of the anatomy, and I think we just lost a little bit of that. And then the other thing that sort of juts out at me is I know that Hikam Habji has a very like planar type of drawing, meaning you can see all the 3D planes, but the face started to lose its shape and starts right now it feels like an Asaro head versus like a character. So start a little looser. Let's see what character shapes he's got in there. We can add some planar details in there, but we don't want to lose all that. I think he adds like some planes for the nose, maybe. So you always want to keep in mind shape, even when there's 3D forms. So a way you can be more subtle about the 3D forms is, start with the overall shape and then start to chisel from here a little bit. Rather than going in it with like this kind of thing. Right? So if you start from here, then you're going to have to round things out, and I feel like that never really works too well. Cool. And then let's see what else. We didn't talk about leg anatomy, but in general, when I'm drawing the legs, really the main thing you want to emphasize is the difference between the adductor muscles and the quadriceps. So this diagonal line right there is more important. And we get this shape dynamic where it's a little bit rounder on the inside and then tapers towards the knee. Good job on the overlap. I know he's got a lot of these muscles that are very geometric, but something about that hamstring feels really weird to me. Might be that the way you're drawing the shape is like kind of this rectangle and then it's parallel on this side as well. So I would try to apply a little bit more of the shape dynamics that you did here. But also, Hikam Habji, he's still doing some round shapes, so don't be afraid to throw in some rounder curves at the shoulders. Round out that trapezius a little bit. Cool. And yeah, I think proportionally, like I said, I think if you have the mannequin with a little bit longer legs. Yeah, it takes a little bit to get proportions down. But yeah, I think you're doing pretty awesome job. Do you have questions?
No, that was great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
No problem. And cool hair shapes. You always want to include that.
I always get confused as to how these hair shapes kind of work in 3D space, but I'm sure that's a lecture for another time.
Yeah, you could do, it takes a while to get used to doing abstract shapes in perspective. A general rule of thumb that I have is like, okay, let's say we have this kind of complex curve, right? If I'm looking at them directly head on in a back view, or this curve directly head on, you can't really see all that much. So you've got to be used to that. And then if we look at it in a side view, now it's at its longest. So in this case, if I was drawing it, I would kind of have, if I was looking in a direct back view, I would do those same shapes, except that long curly part, I might just have it go straight down. Another thing you can do, you can get 3D models, rotate them around, get used to how abstract shapes fit in 3D space. It takes a little bit of time and definitely some getting used to. All right, great work, man. All right, Mandrint, or Mandirant. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. So sad. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong one. Okay, thing that kind of juts out to me here is we're losing that gesture. And we've got a little bit of a weird thing going on with the perspective, so let's talk about that. We've got, this is tilting at an angle to the side. And then, whereas I feel like what you're trying to do is have that sort of tilt forward, because his whole body is leaning forward. Let me actually copy paste this into clip. That's from class yesterday. Let's. Okay, so if you got this thing going on where the pelvis is tilted up to the right, whereas I feel like what you're trying to do is have the head tilted forward, the rib cage down, and the pelvis back. Right? Remember, everything's got a counterbalance. You'll bring that head a little further forward. So if we're trying to have the rib cage and everything loom forward like it's hanging over, you've got to bring the pelvis back. Tilted back like that. The other thing I would do is I'm going to bring this left arm and I'm going to put it behind this leg. So that way we get a little bit of overlap. Actually, I don't like the way I just did that. Okay, now let's figure out the placement in 3D space. So right now you have this perfectly flat, which you can definitely work that way. That's totally fine, working with a long lens. But you've got, the hips are really throwing me off, or I think throwing off that whole perspective. I'm just gonna add a little bit of a plane. Okay, this leg I'm gonna bring, or the left leg I'm gonna bring back in space, and it visually is on an angle. But this leg, because I want them both to taper in. This leg is kind of just going to go back in space, and it almost looks like it's going straight down. Oops. Maybe we'll give him like a giant axe or something. Okay, so make sure everything counterbalances. If we want to push this, also we can start bringing that head forward. Right, think of this in a side view. It's very Gollum. Give him little pointy ears. And the other thing I would say is, even if you're going to do like interesting shape design, be careful where you want to add rest areas somewhere. So you've got a lot of silhouette breaking that's going on, which can be very cool, but it also it can get to a point where it's too much. So I'd say, in some areas, tone it down or combine certain things together, so that way it feels a little bit more. It feels like there's areas that you really want to emphasize those silhouette breakings. So maybe like I'll group the shoulders all in together to really help that feeling of him sort of hulking over a little bit. And then in the wrist or the elbow and the hands, I'll start to break that silhouette and make it very much sharper. It's your classic goblin archetype. Let's go even more goblin. I'm gonna give him shorter legs and then bigger feet. We'll give him some like goblin garb. Couple spikes. Gotta have a couple spikes. So definitely want you to play around with shape design. Find areas where you can simplify the shapes, find areas where you can exaggerate them and make them interesting. Yeah, so don't push every single shape because that can start to be a little too much. But I like this little rough doodle we got here. That could be a fun little goblin guy. Maybe he should have a bow instead of a giant axe. Who knows? Play around with it. Figure out what you want to give your goblin character. Yeah, and so you're pushing the silhouette in and out at areas that I think it might be too much. So I'll give you an example of why I'm thinking it's too much. So the overall motif for the legs is that it starts wide and then tapers down. Right? And you'll see some character designs that are literally just like this, where their legs just a tube. Once you start breaking the silhouette too much, it's starting to disrupt the flow of what's going on in the leg. And so it no longer feels like a functional leg to me. So my advice, if you want to start pushing these, is keep in mind that flow. I'll do a front view of that. Right, you can definitely play around with those shapes, but this overall flow needs to be there in order for it to be interesting. Otherwise, you're taking away from the bigger picture, and that starts to get distracting. Cool. All right, and yeah, I think the same thing is going to apply for this dude over here. Let's get rid of this, get out of the way. Right, think of the simple gesture first. Proud Boy, not the political group, but just a proud dude. Maybe have that arm at the side. But don't, like I said, don't forget the overall flow of that arm, right? This in and out that you're getting here at the bicep and then the forearm is so much that it doesn't feel like that arm functions anymore. And we talked about anatomy yesterday, but you can see the differences in shape design that I'm using here. So for the back of the arm, I'm using a long line that comes to a point at the elbow, and then that bicep is flexed. Brachioradialis overlaps it. And then a nice proud stance. I feel like you could bring the feet together or the legs together and then have the feet turn out or in different directions. And it's not as proud as I wanted it to be. Push that even more. So now the pelvis is going to tilt forward. Rib cage is going to lean back. Right, it's always about the gesture and flow first. So even the shape design. And once the shape design starts impeding the flow of the forms, then that's fucked up shape design. You want to fix that. Right. You see how these shapes emphasize that flow. You'll have him tilt his head down. but play around with it. I like to feel very exploratory with poses. Yeah, I like that. Same sort of idea, but a little bit more, feels a little more natural. Maybe I might even tilt the shoulders a little bit. Yeah. Do a little shoulder tilt. Get this arm up. Oh, now it's epic. Wasn't epic, and now it's epic. Yeah. So play around. Keep in mind flow. The flow of shapes is significant. That's why I'm using a lot of organic shapes, a lot of simplified mannequins. You can always add the anatomy on top of this. Yeah, don't like the shapes for things like the pecs and whatnot. It feels like it's disrupting the flow, right? We know that volume doesn't need to be so big that it interrupts the forms, or sorry, the mannequin forms, right? I'm just indicating some of those details. All right, let's go back. Cool. Yeah, I love these character designs, right? These are character designs that are geometric, but they still manage to have a lot of flow. You got this right about simple edge and then a complex edge. So I think you did a good job assessing that. We're going to talk about having a character on a platform, but I think that's one of the things you're kind of messing up is the characters aren't really accurately sitting in 3D space. So I'll tell you why. You're giving me a lot of info that's telling me we've got a little bit of depth and perspective, right? First of all, the diagonal placement of the feet means that we can see the floor, right? If we couldn't see the floor, the feet would be at the same exact level. So already we've got an idea that, yeah, we're seeing the top of the feet. That means this back foot here would be seeing maybe more of that top plane a little bit. All right, we've got to see a little bit of dimension there. Right, and then this foot starts to get a lot bigger. The foot starts to get a lot bigger, but there's not really dynamic perspective. So like, it's not like a super dynamic camera angle where part of the body is like really coming at the camera. So you don't want to change the scale all that much there. Let's see what else. And then, yeah, I feel like we're sort of seeing that hip, like kind of seeing him at a side view, like a side 3/4. So this leg on the right, like we haven't talked about clothing folds, but folds got to go up and over that form. So it's got to be, those folds got to follow over the form. So this line that goes down and across feels a little strange. It could have been there. I'm not looking at the reference, so it's kind of hard to tell. Other important thing, and we'll talk about placing characters on a platform next time. So we'll get really in depth about that. Other important thing is if you look at the shape design there on the leg, it's still keeping in mind that overall flow. Like on a macro scale, the leg continues to taper down. Whereas if you look at what you have, you've got this, and then that calf point is equally as wide, just on the opposite side. So you've got the right idea of staggering these shapes, but now you've kind of gotten rid of the overall flow. Cool. Yeah, I want to talk to you about placing characters in perspective because we're losing a bit of that. Particularly with this one, I'm not sure if they're standing or if they're lying back, but we're sort of missing that volume. And same comment about the tapering, right? You're tapering too much inside some of these forms. It's tapering down to a point and then getting wide again. Just imagine that whatever shapes we've got are going to fit inside this. Right, so the overall idea is that it's tapering down. Cool. Yeah, make sure proportionally. You don't want to shorten their legs like that. That's not very cool. If you're gonna do that, go real extreme. Give them like giant upper torso. Tiny head. Cave troll type features. Big arms. Go even tinier head. Go cave troll core. Cool. Sick gesture. But yeah, basically I keep using very simple, even when I'm doing a loose sketch like this, I'm keeping simple silhouettes. And I'm focused on tapering my shapes at pretty much all points. Right? Even when I'm drawing these dumb arms, they're kind of tapering down a little bit. Simple is good. Simple is best. All right. Yeah, here's another area where we can use a little bit more simplicity, right? Like these hips, you're doing this separation, and I kind of get why, but it's best to treat the hips as a trapezoid. I like starting with that mannequin, just treating the body as though it's just two trapezoids. Start here, and then you can start to add more details. If you can rotate this thing, then we can start to, add a little bit more detail. Yeah, in the shape design here, I think we're missing a lot of that anatomy. Again, I know we just sort of touched on anatomy yesterday, but that shape design's got to, you're using all round shapes for everything in areas where like, the hip bone might be a bit more sharp, right? Even in this, there's a lot of sharp shapes. The hands, even the hip bone here is a little bit sharper, but you're kind of simplifying everything to a very round curve. So you don't want to do that. A little bit more dynamics of the shapes. All right, all right. Who's up next? We got Watzak. I don't know why it's not letting me zoom in. Or I mean, I'm zooming in, but it's low res. All right. Let me gather my thoughts. Nice job there. Okay, so I'm gonna take a few of these that I think kind of get the point across that I want to get across. So you're doing a really good job. You're capturing the gestures in most parts. I think we're missing a little bit of the, how do I put this? Like, we're missing some of the nuance. So I'll give you an example. Like in this one, if you just look at her silhouette, I could see why you would assume it's just sort of straight across. But we've got her pelvis, which is going forward, but then the rib cage is slightly tilted. So we're seeing a little bit of that far left shoulder. Right, so that changes this gesture a little bit. Right, there's a twist between those two forms. So that might be, you know, try to refine your mannequin a little bit. Use center lines to indicate stuff. So for example, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the center line here, and then I'll draw the shape for the pelvis. And now that center line is the silhouette because we're viewing the pelvis in profile view, and we've got like a subtle 3/4 to the back. Also, it looks like the other arm is in front, so make sure you use a little bit of line weight to show which is in front. And then you gotta add hair shapes. Everybody knows you gotta do that. Where's the spiky hair? So that's a little bit of the flour sack twist that's going on there. You know, if that's confusing, take some time to just do the flour sack, get comfortable maneuvering that in space. I might not have emphasized how important this concept is, but it's incredibly important. Did a great job getting the twist there, though. However, that one was really good. Let's see. Yeah, areas I think we can push. Like, let's take, I'm gonna draw this crouched position a little bit, right? There is a sort of S shape to the spine, or rather, you want to either emphasize the, sorry, we want to try to emphasize what the spine is doing, right? So in this case, I guess it is kind of just going straight up and down. But if he's hunched forward a little bit, we kind of, in this case, we want to emphasize the C curve. So I'm going to bring his shoulders down a little bit and his pelvis back. I'm going to bring that head down. Right, so we always want to try to, again, identify what the main thing is and push that. Sometimes that means, it could mean thinking about it in terms of the spine, thinking about it in terms of the flour sack. Each one of those tools is there to help us figure out how the body's working. But you can see in this case, yeah, that's kind of linear. but I'm emphasizing that a little more. Okay, in this one, that's a hard one to do. The reason being is the body is tilted back. So you drew it as if the body was straight up, but it's actually tilted back like this. So we want everything to curve up and over. I love that pose. Also adding a little more head tilt always, I feel like it's kind of nice. Now my figure is just wrapping its legs around your figure. My bad. Also, it sounds weird to talk about shape design of just like what happens in real life, but there's a little shape that happens here on her tricep where it kind of goes out. And for whatever reason, that happens in women more than it happens in men. Like, I don't know how to describe it or why it happens exactly, but there's like a convexity that happens a little bit higher up on the tricep that looks really nice. So I always try to emphasize that, or I always take note of it and then fuck it up. It's a better way to, more like what happens, but yeah, I like that. Cool. Yeah, another one like here we can emphasize the back tilt of the rib cage, right? Don't get distracted by the boobies, right? The main idea is that it's going back in space. So our main concept is that C curve back in space. It's true, you don't want to be distracted by that because it changes the silhouette obviously, but like the main thing that's happening is like the main trunk of the body is doing that. It's the same with anatomy. You don't want to get distracted by the anatomical details and then change up what's actually happening. Like we want to get, we can add that on top. We can always add the boobies in, it's okay. But that C curve back is very, very crucial there. And then, yeah, that's my 2022 quote is don't get distracted by the boobies. And yeah, remember your flour sack. I would suggest going back and doing a little bit of flour sack attack with these just to get used to simplifying one side, making the other side more complicated. That's the flour sack of that one. Right. And rather than doing all of them, rib cage, skull, pelvis as separate entities, try out different mannequins A lot of times for characters, I like to take a rounded rectangle and use that. It's basically just an elongated flour sack. And if you're comfortable bending that, you can bend your person. Cool. Alrighty. Great, great work. Is it the same one? No, it's not. Yeah, I think I went through enough of these to make the point. But you're doing a good job of capturing 3D form though. So that's important. All right, that's our boy Whatsack. RJ, are you here? I know you're at work. All right, I'm gonna hope you're here. Wait, there's 37 messages. Present, awesome. You're just at work, so you're not talking. Cool. All right, let me open these up, gather my thoughts. I actually looked at the TV Choi one, so let me start there because I already have thoughts about it. Okay, so good job on the perspective. Although I'm actually gonna be a dick. So you would see the top plane of that foot because right if this is down on the floor, right? Think about it this way: if you're seeing the floor, you're seeing the top plane of things. So we definitely would be able to see the top of the foot there. Our horizon line it's actually a little bit flatter here. Like, yeah, that angle is a little off. I would use the horizon line's like right at the center there. Okay, but that's kind of less important because the biggest concern is we lost our gesture. Lost the gesture. The main thing that's happening is this interesting curve. Right? The main thing is we don't want to lose the gesture. Okay, remember what I said. Don't get distracted by the boobies. That applies to male and female boobies. You got distracted by the boobies. You let them distract you. All right. Also, those bad boys are down at an angle. You can use those to create a little angle there. Help get the perspective. I'll talk about the shape design in a second. I think the same thing applies here where I was talking about the overall shape needs to taper down, right? And once, you know, these calves are getting real tough. They're getting really wide, and I think that's sort of distracting the overall flow of the shape. That will take some getting used to. I'll sometimes think of the knee as like a distinct part of it as well, right? Because you kind of drew it like the knee was just part of the thigh, whereas I might, if I was drawing a leg, I might do like, I would sort of emphasize this back diagonal. So the flow is into the center of the body. At the knee, it goes out and then back in again. And then at the foot, out. Now I'm over exaggerating this gesture right now just to make the point. I might use a simpler curve than that. I'm just trying to make that point. Okay, the leg, everything tapers down. That's not always the case. You could have a character that doesn't. You might find an example that doesn't. I just think it flows nicely to have the leg always tapering. And I'm emphasizing that lightning bolt gesture. Okay, let's talk a little bit about anatomy. Scroll up. Okay. Actually, I made that head too high up. Let's lower that slightly, and then all will be well in the world. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I think we're missing a little bit of, or like, because of the silhouette changes, right? You're completely losing that flow, that S shape of the body. The other thing is, if you're gonna make silhouette changes, right? Like he's got this thing going on. Don't make the silhouette changes like so minor that they're just like little blebs. It feels kind of weird. It feels like you're not fully committed to that decision. If that makes any sense. Overall, that guy's body, like his form, feels like I was going to draw wrapping lines like this. Kind of feels like that, right? So every silhouette change that we do that deviates from that is going to be pretty dramatic. What else? I think some of the shapes you're using for the abdomen is a little strange. What is TB doing? Yeah, see, she's doing the cat the cat mouth thing too. It's really it's the best shape. Yeah, it's a little bit harder edged, and everything kind of tapers down in a diamond. So for the abs, everything is kind of going down, and then yeah, even him, it's kind of doing that. So I use like lighter shapes there, but the overall, like the main form in there in the abdomen is this, right? I think I could sum up this idea as there's primary forms and then secondary forms and tertiary forms. So the primary form of the ab is this form, right? And so the shading here, or this like main form, requires the most emphasis. But oftentimes what will happen is you're getting distracted by these the secondary forms, the shadows, like the definition between the six pack. But those are actually secondary forms within this larger form. So it'll often be more important to define the primary form over the secondary one. Cool. Anatomy wise, this pec, we want to go up and over in that direction. Not fully, but just up and over the bicep. Bicep goes down into the armpit. Down into the armpit. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. Do you have any questions about that? I know you're, was he always wearing a hat? Whom is wearing a hat? The guy or, anyway. Primary forms, very important. Taking notes, all right. Cool. Yeah, I think these can benefit from the shape design stuff we were talking about. In general, I mean, these shapes are looking pretty good. Like, you're doing a great job. In general, areas that stick out to me, I'm just noticing it just because I just see it happening a few times. Like, if you're drawing the arm like this, where the curve is identical on opposite sides, that doesn't feel correct because there's a staggered flow. So if you offset these, that'll feel better. I'm also using a different type of curve on each side. Or if we just use a more simplified shape. So I'm using a straighter line on the bicep. So you could imagine the bicep as one edge and then the tricep as two. So that shape design plays in there. You're starting to implement that everywhere else though, or in a lot of different places. Cool, cool. Let's see. Let's not add bumps that aren't there in the body. Don't want to do that. That's some Michelangelo shit. He goes in and just adds all those extra bumps. And again, this is something we didn't fully talk about in yesterday's class, but this sort of straight line you're using for the abdomen, I like to use this S curve. So if I just pull up, let's zoom in. Let's take a look at this dude for a second. It's not fully in profile view, but there's the top portion of the ab. Kind of looks like whatchamacallit. I'll think of it. Looks like somebody. Okay, so this is the primary form of the ab, right? So this top portion, or I guess this portion up to the belly button, and then this lower portion, which is longer, right? These secondary forms in there are less important. All right, cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, another example would be like, we have the deltoid, which is a form that looks like this. Right? Within that, there might be some secondary forms, right? There's like, just draw it over here. Like there's some divots in the anatomy that change shape a little bit, but those are secondary forms and not as important. I'm glad the ab thing is a game changer. We like to hear it. cool. Yeah, what else? And just when you're drawing hands, I just like to make them nice and blocky. I don't know how to describe whatever that shape is, but that's sort of how I think about it. Got a rounder shape here at the upper part of the forearm. And then it tapers down and like a tilted trapezoid for the fingers or for the hand. Yeah, we can even just simplify that. Simple shapes. Okay, and then yeah, we talked about you know, straights versus curves, right? If we look at this deltoid, right, you're doing, I don't know why I'm picking out that deltoid, but you're doing that sort of thing. And those anatomy overlaps are going to start to make a little bit more sense. So like, that brachioradialis comes up and above the arm. Another thing I like to do is at the wrist, and again, we didn't talk about hands yet or anything, but I like to emphasize a drop at the wrist. Let's fix those fingers, huh? So this little drop here just adds nice gesture to it. Cool, cool. That shape is definitely better. You got that sort of in and out thing I was talking about. I've got comments about the lighting, but we'll talk about the lighting because we didn't do lighting yet, but we are going to talk about it. In a nutshell, primary forms. You missed the primary form here, right? The primary form here is, I'll just draw it out like this. So there's our primary form. He gave me top left lighting. So if it's coming from above, every plane that's facing down is going to be in shadow. So that means from here down might be in shadow. You can see him doing it here, right? He's casting the primary form of that rib cage into shadow rather than just like a chunk of it. You've got the right idea though. You're pretty close. But yeah, primary forms always are more important. Cool. And then, yeah, we lost the gesture a little bit again, right? Look at that. Diagonal down to the left. That's crucial. That's what makes this pose exciting. Don't lose that. You can upset me. Gesture's my weakness. Oh, well, that's what we're here for, man. This is figure drawing for animation. Not figure drawing for chumps. Right, we want to see shoulder tilt, hip tilt, all that. Like I can even bend that arm backwards, breaking her limbs, but in a way that's fun. All right, cool. Great work, great work. Love to see it. This one, oh yeah, my comment was you put her face in profile, but you're cheating. Face is not in profile. Face is in 3/4, and you tried to bullshit me. You tried to bullshit me. You said, no, it's in profile. What are you talking about? You think you can bullshit me? You think you can come into my class and try to convince me that it's not in 3/4 when it's in 3/4? You think you can think you could do that? Can't do that. Not in my class. We don't do that. Yeah, and I would say with she uses like a little bit softer shapes, so I would have simplified the head shape to like almost like a heart shape, but you soften up some of the edges. And then the hair is next level. She does a bunch of that. She's got like these diamond shapes, and then they twist over on themselves, right? Bunch of that kind of thing. So keep studying her hair shapes. Notice that it's like it's the same concept as the whatchamacallit, same concept as twisting with the flour sack. It's just like if it was thin like paper. So find your primary shape. She does a lot of that small, medium, large thing. Just think of the letter S kind of. And then at every turn, that line comes in and breaks the silhouette. And that's what creates that twist. So it's that overlapping of the lines. You tried to play it off. You tried to bullshit me. You can't do it. No, you didn't. You're good. You're good. And yeah, shadow wise, primary forms first. So you got distracted by the buoys, as I said. Primary form is just the rib cage. Primary form is the rib cage. And applies to everybody with ribs. You know, maybe people don't have ribs. So that primary form there, if we're casting a light, let's say we're doing a light top down, everything below this plane is going to be in shadow. Cool, but we didn't do lighting yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. It's just jutting out to me, so that's why I'm talking about it. Cool. Yeah, and these guys I'm going to leave till next time because we're going to talk about platforms. Because we've got a little bit of perspective stuff going on here. This one looks like the platform should be like this. A little bit flatter, horizon line around here-ish. But then you've got the horizon line going all the way up here. So not sure I agree with you, but we'll talk about that next time. Okay, I looked at Wattsax. This is fine. This is just labeling the anatomy. Don't want to talk about that. For Mimo, we'll get to in a second. Let's just look at what we got. All right, let's go to for Mimo. This is looking really good. I think again, you're doing a really solid job of like, I love the shape design that you've got for these characters. I love the chibi version, hell yeah. Pushing the pose a lot. Not sure, you're saying you're struggling, but it looks good to me. Balance is kind of spot on. I think really the only thing to do here is just like, is just start to put in full character designs and stuff, because it looks like you got a pretty solid grasp on this. I think just for whatever reason here, this calf is jutting out to me just because of that, what I was talking about earlier, where I feel like the primary shape, or yeah, the primary shape should stand out more. So, you know, have everything tapered down. Even if we get a little bit of that gesture that cuts out, the overall shape is tapering down. But in most of these, you've done that. Mimo and Yang are hanging out too much. It's fucked up. But yeah, it looks good. Great job with the hip tilt. Yeah, that's all looking good. Okay, my only concern here is that I feel like you lost all the cool shape design that was going on before once you started doing anatomy. So what I want you to do is keep your, wait, where is yours? Sorry. I mixed it all up here. Okay, keep the shape design that's here. Like, this is all good. And then apply that to these, right? Because really the only thing that's kind of missing here is, you know, like I said, character design. Maybe some elements like the pectoral muscles will show some overlap as they go up onto the chest. Same with the legs, a little bit of that tendon going down over the knee, but just very subtle instances of anatomy. I'm just gonna, these feet look a little strange, so I'm just cutting out a little bit with that. Yeah, I like the feet shape, so let's keep those. Let's see, am I noticing something here? Am I noticing, okay, am I noticing that the 3/4 faces, is that an issue? I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I could be wrong. Could it be that you've been bullshitting me as well and I didn't realize? Could it be that you've been BSing? No, you're not BSing me, I'm joking. Yeah, whenever I mean, I'm not entirely sure what was happening. I'll just tell you what's jutting out to me, which is the proportions of the head are telling me it's in profile, because I've got this length of the cranium, but then you drew the those little eye shapes, and I know they're just little tiny eye shapes, but you kind of drew it as if it was in 3/4. So when it's in 3/4, that scale's got to shrink down. Just using your default gesture face. Yeah, I know what you mean. Just even if you're doing default gesture face, I would make sure to just keep those proper, like the eyes properly in place, just because it sells what's going on. Right, because the closer we get into profile view, more of that cranium we get. Sounds like an insult. You have default gesture face. Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah, I'm just noticing that there's an awful lot of faces in front view and in profile. Not catching them all. I could just not be seeing it. But yeah, I would say if they're, if they're in a 3/4, just give me the center line or some sort of indication that they're in 3/4. Some sort of indicator. But other than that, main body's looking good. All the poses are pretty on point. Not sure if you have any questions. That's looking good too. Can always push these even more. Yeah, only dotted eyes. Cool. Yeah, no real complaints just yet, but we'll see once we start doing our final line works how that goes. Once we start doing character models on top of that, we'll see what we have to say about that. All right. I wish the GoToMeeting didn't have to be, has its controls directly over where I'm trying to scroll in the tabs. Cool, cool, cool. Nice, simple, like to see it, like to see the shoulder tilt. We love it. We love that for you. Okay. Anytime we've got a gesture and you can simplify that gesture to a straight line, I'm going to say that's a no-no. I want to say that's your job as the artist to go, okay, let's make that not stupid or not boring. Because we can draw things people can't do when they're doing these reference packs. When Noah Bradley's doing his reference pack, I know exactly who that is. So push this curve. We can even rotate the, so you see where the center line for the chest is here? I can even move that, add a little bit more twist, and bring that arm further back. All right, so you can start to change things around, change the way things are in space to make them a little more appealing. We're going to talk about that next week. It's debating on exactly what we're going to do next week, but I think that's where to go. Then it'll be lighting after that. Let's see. You've heard me talk about shape design stuff, so I don't want to belabor that point. I love that. You've got a good grasp on a lot of these neutral poses. I really I appreciate when you get a neutral pose that looks good. Like that one looks great. It's awesome. Yeah, like that's exactly what I want to see with that neutral pose is just rib cage back, pelvis leaning forward. It's just badass. It's classic. You can't beat it. It's a great job there. Yeah, with any of these like more action-packed poses, we're really going to start to play with that a lot. Think about what makes something feel more powerful. Aside from changing the camera lens, if he's pulling his arm back to punch, the further back you bring that arm, the more power it's going to get. So just imagine that tilt of the rib cage is like a wind-up toy. So the more you rotate that, okay, now my microphone's getting in the way. It's never good. Let's move that head slightly. So I brought the arm so far back that you don't even see the bicep now. Brought that front foot forward. I don't know where I want to put that back foot. I don't like where it is. I'm going to angle it in. I find the more you like angle things towards the center, the more interesting they get. And maybe that hand in front is coming at us a little bit. I know I changed that pose around a ton, but it just feels better. All right, twist in the body. The pelvis is going directly towards where the fist is going to go. And then I've rotated the rib cage far back enough that we're not even seeing the bicep. Maybe I'll even put that arm up at an angle. And then we're seeing the front of the fist. And then give him hair that's blowing in the wind. And a giant axe, because everybody's got an axe today. Got an axe to grind. You see when I'm sketching too, I'm nice and just keeping it loose. Like I'm being clear about the pose and the shapes, but I'm just kind of like jamming out a little bit. That's where I like to be. I like to be in a jamming out state of mind. Cool. So we can tweak those gestures. Super important. Tweak the shapes too. Like I know you're trying to get those muscle anatomy in there, but honestly, there's legs and character designs that just look cool that are just like a straight line. Like if you look at Spike from Cowboy Bebop, he just has like a straight line leg and then cool shoes. Wait, I'll do it over here. It's just cool because it just has more flow to it. It's not so much about being anatomically correct, it's about making cool shit. All right, play around with proportions too. They don't all have to be perfectly realistic. try simplifying things. I literally just made the body a pure rectangle here in this gesture that I just did. Okay, hold up. Yeah, you can see I'm just doing. Kind of looks like a clown now. There we go. That fixed it. Yeah, the axe, now he's got to have guns. Okay, enough. I just get carried away. Getting carried away to the point where we're not even critiquing anymore. Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of the shape design stuff applies here as well, although you're doing a solid job of designing or getting the main mannequin shape. Let's see, a few things that jut out to me just in general with everybody. I realized we could dedicate a little love to drawing the head, because I think everyone's got a bit of a case of gesture face, which I get it, it's understandable. Gesture face, we can use, shapes that just emphasize the flow more. Even if you use simple shapes, just taper, and then I kind of like the flow of the general form tapers down towards the wrist, and then the hand is kind of big, or like the same with the leg. I like the leg tapers down, and then the foot's big, but that might just be a preference of mine. Design preferences be design preferences, so can't be out here telling you which way to do your designs. But yeah, I would like to see, just with everybody, a little bit more playing around with the proportions. Look at animated characters, and a good exercise might be to take these figures and then apply that to an animated character design, as opposed to just imitating the figure.
Can you say that again?
Basically, just take figure reference that you're doing and then apply it to an animated character design.
Oh, okay,
as opposed to just drawing the character that's there, or the figure that's there. But I think you did do that, so let's get to that. Okay, yeah, these ones I looked at, I thought they were great. Particularly the face. I think they just came across really good. Shape design's looking better. Same thing at, this happens at joints a lot. Joints are very difficult to make feel natural. You did a great job here on this leg, but with the shape design on the arm, if it gets too thin, like if it gets really wide and then really thin at like the elbow, it feels like the arm's gonna break. Right? I'm kind of exaggerating the idea here, but it's gotta feel like it's still got volume at the elbow. Like if you look at the arm in front view, the elbow is actually the widest point. So if we look at the arm with palms face up, I did that backwards. I just realized I don't know how to draw this angle. Oops. The hand at this angle. Okay, wait, I'll fix it. I'll fix it. We got this. What are we talking about? I know how to draw everything. No one ever said I didn't know how to draw it. I'm your teacher. I know how to do everything. What are you talking about? I never said I don't know how to draw something. Anyway, the widest point of the arm is actually at the elbow, like right around here. So if it gets too thin, like that shape just tapers too thin at the elbow, it doesn't feel like it's got a lot of functionality. And so that kind of, I feel like that fucks up the flow of that shape. It's the same thing of, keeping in mind the primary forms. So yeah, just, maybe just keep that in mind as you're doing some shape design. The other thing, if you look at that arm that he's got there, linear shape for the bicep, 2 edges for that tricep. Right? And see how much space there is there in the elbow, right? It's got a lot of space there still. So that shape design is important. Straight, then a curve. Or if you're doing both of those with edges, 0 inflection points, 1 inflection point. The positives here. Great job simplifying that silhouette. That looks great. The facial expression is perfect, man. You did a really good job. Same deal here. I like when legs taper down towards the knee. If you're gonna show any extra muscularity in the leg, do it up by the crotch region. There's a group of muscles. I know we didn't talk about it yet. I'm very sorry. But there's a group of muscles called the adductor muscles. And those bad boys get real bulbous. So we can strengthen the upper portion of the leg and then have it taper down towards the knee. And then for the foot shapes, I kind of think of like, if we looked at it in a top down, so then when I put that in perspective, so it's got this inflection. And then, yeah, I don't really want to worry about toes right now. I fuck up the toes anyway. The piggies. Yeah, I get what you're doing with that toe. I think generally the idea there is like kind of with the fingers where you want to, there's this Z shape. I don't know exactly how to explain this, but see how you kind of just have like a shape? If you're going to do that, I feel like you got to have that Z. I fucked it up. Don't worry about it. Pretend I didn't say anything. And yeah, look at those ankles. It's got that nice it's like a wedge that fits around the foot shape. What are you asking again? Oh wait, don't ask about the feet. Shit, don't do it. Can we check out Mia's from last week? Maybe. I got to let's get through what we got to get through. Did I miss it last week? That's my little breakdown of how I think about the feet. Okay, well in that case we'll have to get to it. cool. Cool. Yeah, I think we could push those gestures a little bit more. Like I was saying about, yeah, all that stuff I was saying about pushing the gesture. Make sure we sharpen up those shapes as well, right? There's a lot here where we're sharpening up shapes. I was trying to make the point yesterday of how joints have to sort of function around each other. I'm going to just draw like the hamstrings for a second. Okay, when you think of joints, I want you to think of a hinge, like a door hinge. Okay, so you see how this layering shows that they can function around each other? Like the fact that this sort of sockets into this little hinge there, that's what we want to show with joints, right? But the way you've drawn the arm, I actually can't tell, right? The inside where the bicep is, just kind of going in. So when we draw the arm, that bicep goes into the center of the arm. It's getting a little Bridgman here, but the reason why these lines overlap is that's sort of the anatomical equivalent of showing that we're creating a hinge by having those lines overlap each other. So the other thing that's kind of happening here is like there should be a little bit of, probably a little tapering of that bicep shape to show, actually, you don't even need to taper it. You could do this, have the brachioradialis overlap. So this overlapping line is taking the place of that hinge. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think the shape design is the part we want to improve the most, right? It's got to taper down towards the knee, then let that knee overlap. In general, on the back side of the leg here, it's a little more convex and then gets concave down towards the knee. Obviously, we can play with that a little bit, but so those inflection points are at different spots. I'd actually do this one. It's like my general schematic for the inflection points of the leg. Okay. Awesome work, my dude. And this one, just watch out with when that head's tilted back, all the features got to rotate up. And that ear's got to go back. I don't know if that's exactly what you're doing or if it was just tilted at an angle. But yeah, in this case, where it's tilted back, everything's going up. Okay. Nice. Yeah, it's looking great. These shapes are nice. I really appreciate that you're simplifying out the details too. That's always a good call. And there, yeah, I'm starting to see that wedging of forms. So great work. Nice. Got some comments about the cloth. I'm going to leave that till next time. But very, very good. How many more we got here? All right. Spent way too long on the anatomy poses. That can happen. That can happen. All right, let me gather my thoughts here. I think one thing that's jutting out at me is foot placement, which we'll talk about next week because I really want to focus on planting characters in 3D space because that seems to be a little bit of a concern.
You're like my greatest enemy, so.
Yeah, they're very important for how you plant the character in space. So like I'll show you the one that sort of jut out at me. Hey, go to the thing I tried to open. There we go. Okay, so this one here, let's redo that pose. Okay, so for figuring out the perspective here, always take note of the distance between the feet, right? If there is a gap between the feet like this, that means the camera is above the floor, but we know we're looking up at her because we're seeing underneath the chin. We're seeing underneath the chin. And also there's overlap going on, right? We've got the shoulder, which is overlapping all these forms, so we don't see what's going on over there. So let's start with the gesture, because as with everything, we got to start with the gesture. C curve, leaning back, big thing. We're kind of missing that in yours, right? We're missing that curve. You got it in these other ones. Make sure that's there. Now the difference is all of our ellipses are going to start curving up because everything is above us right now. The horizon line's around the knees. How did I figure that? It's kind of flat there, right? So we can assume that the angle is going to start getting sharper as it goes up. When something's like her face is headed directly at us, but it's above the camera, it's kind of hard to, you're not going to see any like left to right convergence. It's just you're seeing underneath her chin. So that's kind of the idea. All right. There's also a little bit of hip tilt, so let's get going on that. Okay, so there is how I'm starting with the body. It kind of looks like the flour sack. Right, and then her hips are tilted a little bit towards us. Right, see there's a bit of a twist. I'm exaggerating it here, but there's a bit of a twist going on. Right, that shape I'm using, and you can go to a point as well, but it's got to curve up. Think cylinders that are above your head, everything's curving up. The legs we're seeing at eye level, so if you're seeing a cylinder at eye level, it just looks like a rectangle. So we can just put in shapes that we want. Okay, now is where we're going to start to get convergence on the feet. We're only seeing the side plane of that back foot. And we're seeing the front plane of that foot, but there's also a scale difference. Let me fix that shape. And so we've got a bit of a platform. Try to use whatever context clues you can get.
Yeah, I think I left these two like they're still 2D. Like I didn't really think about the form too much now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's a challenging one. Also for everybody, you want to do like, you want 3D volumes, but you want your characters to look like their characters. Give them little elements that, like, I don't know, give them socks or something. So then that feels like you get those wrapping lines. You get them free of charge. All right, anyway, let's get to the hand. Okay, so let's draw this off to the side. The upper arm is down at an angle, but it's pretty foreshortened, right? We're not seeing most of that length. And then the forearm is still foreshortened as well. So the degree on these ellipses is very round for both of these. But the key is that that forearm overlaps a ton of that bicep. What else? And yeah, I think what's not feeling natural about it is it feels like this shoulder almost goes straight down in perspective. Like, because if our vanishing point is around here, that's almost going straight down towards that vanishing point. But it feels like yours is kind of going horizontal. So that's part of the issue, is that our vanishing point's all the way over here. With these, when you get foreshortening, I like to, sometimes I'll start with whatever's closest. You know, do it whatever way works. Maybe we'll push that a little bit more. Yeah, if we had any other elements that gave a little depth, that might help. But yeah, it's pretty hard to see the perspective in this one. This is where I would use character design elements like a pant line or something that gives me that ellipse. So I get some wrapping lines.
Yeah, I think when I was doing it, I like just wasn't thinking about the perspective at all for most
Yeah.
of these. So I think I like kept them too gestural. So.
Listen, you did a good job in terms of capturing the gesture, so that's great. I think now that's just taking it to another step, especially with a pose like that where you've kind of got to consider it just because it is a very challenging angle. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, this one as well has got a little bit of that. All these camera angles are low here. It's going down. I think you're kind of flattening those a little bit. But, you know, like you said, that you were thinking about it more gesturally. Next week, I think, is going to be somewhat revelatory in that front, so that'll help. I think you're doing a good job of simplifying the mannequin to push the form, or sorry, to push the gesture. I think we could use softer shapes when it comes to some of those, right? It feels like in some areas you're using very, very sharp shapes that, and that can be cool. But I think what makes sharp shapes interesting is when they're contrasted with very softer shapes. So yeah, a little more variety in the shape design. Again, I know it's like you're doing your gestural sketches, but it's always good to work that in there. What else do we have here? Cool. And that's a crazy angle. So yeah, I mean, the great thing is that you're really capturing that. You're really capturing, like, you're getting the pose. You're capturing the gesture, the main line of action with everything. The shapes are looking pretty solid. I think now I want to see a little bit more design on these, right? I want to see more of like how I started tweaking the gestures, how I started tweaking the poses a little bit to make them even more exciting. And I'd like to see you use use another character model sheet that's not just the figure reference. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm running dry on these anyways, so
Yeah,
like getting
yeah.
out of the last couple. So
Awesome. Let's see how the anatomy went. It's looking good. Those overlaps are there. Nice job. It doesn't seem like you'll have too much trouble with the anatomy. Cool, cool. Yeah, I think my biggest issue is somewhat stylistic in terms of how you're indicating the anatomy. Like, I think in some of these we can use different shapes for like some ab shapes. We can tweak how you're overlapping, pushing the overlap a little more in some areas. But generally you have the right idea. What else? What else? Like, just so you know what I'm talking about, like, let's take this dude. Right, you've got this little line that's overlapping here, but we can play around with how much that overlaps. Right, show that those forms are wedging into each other. And we can simplify silhouettes, right? Like, instead of detailing all the nuances of the shoulders and the trapezius, I love to just combine the shoulders and trapezius into one. It's one of my favorite shape things to do. I think it looks cool. So I think we can start to work on the nuances of how you're indicating things, because you've got pretty solid understanding of how it's working, but now we want to take it to another level, right? Tweak some of the shape designs so there's more tapering. Particularly with clothing, you know, play around with how that breaks the silhouette or doesn't. Like you've got it so that his underwear is smaller in the silhouette, but I might make it wider, or not necessarily do this, but like the concept is that you can break the silhouette and play around with it.
Oh yeah, that does look really cool, actually.
So you'll see artists do that all the time. We've seen a bunch of examples of that. Let me pull up my character designs that I'm working on. Like you're going to see with the clothing folds, like I pay a lot of attention to where the silhouette's broken, right? It's not just that his shirt goes directly into his belt. I mean, you can do that. That's totally fine. But I wanted to make that pop out of the silhouette. Originally, I had the shapes of these shoulders come up more, but then I found that to be a little distracting. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, right? I still have to play around with it, but a lot of energy goes into deciding, okay, what's going to be simple, what's going to be more complex, that sort of thing. So I play around a lot. For me, when I'm designing this, I was like, okay, I've got a lot of shit going on in the hair. There's so many shapes. So the more shapes I can streamline, the better. And like, if you look at his legs, I might even streamline those even more, like just taper that all the way down. And when I was animating him, I kind of was just like, I even got rid of this little bump here in the legs. I was just like animating that straight down. Right? So that type of design has a psychological effect, right? The fact that he's tapering all the way down makes him feel a little bit speedier, a little bit more nimble. Cool. You have any questions?
No, I'm good right now. I think you're covering most of it. I think a
Cool.
lot of my problems are like repeating a bit, so I'll try and nail some of them down.
As they always are with most people. Oh, I've got one comment, which this applies to everybody. I've kind of seen it a few times. Sorry, I'm picking you to do it, but the belly button, right? Everybody's been drawing it just like a dot. So in general, if you're just going to indicate something with a line, so if we just like zoomed in on the belly button for a second and we sort of look at that form, kind of like goes in and then out again, right? I'm going to indicate this top portion that's in shadow and maybe a line that sort of goes down towards the top. So something like that feels more like a belly button. I'm not going to indicate that whole, I'm not going to indicate the whole bottom area just because that's getting hit with light. So it makes less sense to do that. So, how you indicate things with lines is pretty important and tells a lot about what's going on. So you'll notice that I do that. Not this one. Let's zoom out. Oh wait, no. Yeah, like on this little femboy, I'm indicating the top portion of the belly button there, but not the bottom portion. My bad. He just looked like he was wearing leggings. I didn't mean it in a negative sense. I meant it in a positive sense. He just looks like he's going to be in like a 1980s club or something, He's got pink hair. Just looks ready to rock, that's all. Nah, let's get rid of that. Okay, anyway, main point is we're going to work on how we indicate things. Even though a lot of times we're indicating stuff in line, lighting plays a huge role in that. So, you know, where you indicate your lines, you might use thicker lines for areas like anything that's going to be in shadow. You know, like you might place a thicker line underneath the chin because that's going to be in shadow. Cool. All right, great work. All right, Brittany, what's up? Let's have a look through. Still like the design of these disembodied mannequin people. I think they're very interesting to me. I'm going to call you out about something here with the shading, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I want to see what's going on with the rest of this first. Yeah, these are looking really good. Okay. So, later, RJ. First things first, let's make sure we keep that gesture alive and well. Right? That probably could angle in a little more. And then the foot, angle that out. And then if you're gonna, for this, I would put the upper leg in and then the lower leg out. I think that would look interesting. It just has a je ne sais quoi, you know, just has a je ne sais quoi about it. The other thing, you're sort of wedging these forms a bit, like you're adding in this block, this sort of shadow. And the only reason I'm calling you out about it is I think it's not really adding to it. And I think it's actually sort of hindering the volumes, right? Because a lot of light, or a lot of like the wedging of forms is told through the shadows. Like, for example, you'll see in the lighting class, if we have two different forms connected, we get a jumping of the shadow like that. And so when you just do this, what you're telling me is that that's one just sort of smooth shape. And it kind of ruins the sense of anatomy. On top of that, there would be a shadow cast from this shirt that would get thicker because the shirt is going up. So the shadow would get wider. We'd probably get, remember the primary form of the belly, so we'd probably get a shadow there or something, you know? Or like, yeah. And we're losing some volume on the leg. And that shape, you see I'm tapering out and then back in. I think the shadow shape you're using is making it feel like it's losing volume. Not exactly sure. So just help me see that volume there. Cool. Okay, these are definitely, I like this one. These are feeling more action packed. I think, right, I think at this point you can make this even more anatomical. Right, you can use, you know, more organic looking mannequins. And I think proportionally, seems like you're making the abdomen really, really tall and lanky, which could work on certain character designs, but then you're making the legs really short. So I think a better character design, in my view, is like shorter torso, longer legs. Feels more natural to me to just, if you're going to do a taller character, to just have them like, you can, as opposed to even making them taller, you could just move the torso, or sorry, the pelvis up a little bit, and then that makes the character feel taller. What else? Let's see. I think in the next few, you kind of started tweaking the shape design, but yeah, think of that flour sack for these. All right, let's not shorten those legs too much. We gotta have some leg. Gotta have some leg. You know? All right, these are good for perspective. I still want to make sure you're getting that gesture in there. That's the most important. We don't want to lose the gesture and the shape. Don't stimp out on that cranium. It's got to be a full face. There's a whole big brain back there. And even when, again, when the leg's in a neutral position, that gesture is in towards the center. Down in towards the center. So you can angle the foot in. And just remember tapering, right? Like this isn't tapering at all. So just keep your shape designs tapering. Is this that I think this was that Ethan Becker video, right, where he did the he used that one shape and did a bunch of different perspectives. Nice. It does work. It is a good shape. But be careful when you're in a situation like this. It's basically just the it's just the flour sack. But be careful in a situation like this, because now you got shoulder here. Now you lost track of your camera, because now our camera is up above looking down. And when we got that, we need overlap. We need overlap. So the head's got to overlap the shoulders. And we're looking down at the head. And see that placement between the feet, right? Everything is going up towards that left vanishing point. And never want just, right? It's got to be gesture to it. Front, back, out, or out, in, out again. Like there's always a subtle bend to the knee. It's never 180 degrees unless you've had a serious medical injury, a serious medical incident. And just watch those proportions. They're getting a little wide there. I think that's that seems to be a thing too, is the proportions. I want you to be consistent. I mean, unless you're like experimenting with stuff and you're trying to play, like specifically play around with proportions, that's totally fine. But I feel like if you're going to play with proportions, I want to know that it's decisive and not like an accident, you know? No problem. Great work. Kimchi, what is up?
Oh,
Hey, hey. All right, I gotta open my door because it's getting so hot in my studio. 1 second. Temperature in here is about 100,000 degrees. Jesus. My Lord. All right, flour sacks are looking good. Okay, let's go back. Nice job on the platform. We love that. We love to see it. We love when the platforms make sense. Very good. Yeah, that's epic. Keeping the gestures alive. Okay, this one's interesting. I would say even just the photo is kind of a weak gesture. So what I would cue in on this is, yes, that shoulder tilt, but I would push that rib cage back a little bit to really make it feel as though it's counterbalancing that the pelvis leaning forward. And I might even push this leg back a little bit. Right, you see how I can get a gesture down without even doing too much anatomy, or I mean, I'm doing a little perspective obviously, but just a tapered shape. So yeah, you see I'm using that center line to push that rib cage form back towards the camera a little bit. And that's like, I just creatively don't like the posture he took. This is one case where both the shoulders and the hips are kind of tilting in the same direction as well. And that's being counterbalanced by this back foot, as well as this arm being up in the air, right? So even if you have general rules about things like the hips and pelvis are going to move in opposite directions, sometimes there's things that do, you know, sort of break your expectation a little bit. Not my favorite pose though. Yeah, and you kind of indicated that back tilt of the, like on the form, you're showing me the top of the box, but then your center line is saying the opposite of that. So that's an interesting thing to take note of. Your center line looks like it's leaning forward when it's supposed to go back. So just keep that in mind. I'm using that shape we were just talking about before. Basically just flour sack. It's a great shape. Yeah, I think If we emphasize that leaning back a little bit more, that would help. Or you could emphasize the opposite and do but really emphasize that he's leaning forward. You see how here I'm making it really clear? He's
Yeah.
leaning forward. Yeah. So again, I'm not gonna blame you because it's like the reference said that, but you know, if your friends told you to jump off a bridge, would you do that? You know?
I mean, do I get a parachute?
Oh, that's a good question. No, you don't get a parachute.
Damn, I'm still jumping.
Bridges aren't usually high enough for that to work.
Shit. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, don't jump off any bridges unless you're like really cool. In which case, if you're really cool, go for it.
Well, we'll all meet up on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds exciting. But yeah, in this case where I'm having him tilt his pelvis his rib cage forward, I'm gonna tilt the pelvis back a little bit so that it counterbalances. So yeah, you know, you want to make certain decisions about those things. Okay, that one looks cool. Good job there. You're getting that tilting. Now I want to see you apply that idea and just simplify that down to the flour sack. I don't know if you did that later on, so I don't want to. All right, let me keep going through. Okay, yeah. So I think with these flour sacks that you've done now, apply them to your figures, right? So like take this one, you can even just repeat that same drawing. All right. And now imagine the body, torso as a flour sack, and use simple shapes. Like I know the obliques are getting compressed there. We can indicate that a little bit if we want. But I don't know, maybe we want to use maybe we want to use simpler shapes. Who knows? I like this shape. But let's play with shape dynamics. Right, so take this same idea, emphasize your line of action. All I'm doing is taking that box. I'm allowing myself to bend and round out the forms of those boxes. And I'm just combining the rib cage and the pelvis into one. Yeah, same here, like push that back even further. This one is swaying to the left actually, so there's this.
Oh, those are all the same one. I just rotated it or
Oh,
tried to.
oh, well that's cool. All right, I didn't know you were being cool.
And then I think the next slide is the one underneath. Yeah, that's how I did it. I did one per slide and then tried to rotate each one.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, yeah, so I would say the thing that is missing a little bit, it's like one, I would keep the rotations a little simpler. So do like 0 degrees if we're looking at it in front view, 45-degree angle, and then 90. So that way we're getting front 3/4 side. So like, for example, side view, this one. This will make it more clear. It seems like you've got it. I really like this exercise, and it seems like you've got a good idea or a good handle on it. Be careful of those shape dynamics, right? I like when it tapers up towards the top. We want to emphasize weight towards the bottom. Form-wise, seems like you're getting a pretty good understanding of it. Let's see. Yeah, I think just keep the rotations more obvious, like front 3/4 90. That way you're like, because some of these feel like they're very close. Like these two feel almost identical.
I think those two are.
Oh,
I
they
just
are
labeled
identical.
them as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
guess from my view, it's
Very
like hard to see like these three are all very close. And then this one's kind of just like the mirror image. And then we've got a front view. So give yourself like really, really discrete steps like I mentioned, and that'll make it easier rather than just sort of like, oh, I'm going to rotate it and see what happens. Nice job here though on the twist. One thing we can do to emphasize that as well is have those lines for the silhouette go inside. And I'm doing it on both sides. See that?
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to simplify the one side and have it on the other. Okay, cool.
Again, it's like it really, there's no specific rule about it, right? It's like just what looks good and what doesn't. Sometimes things look like shit. Sometimes they don't. Depending on how much it's twisting, you might want to overemphasize that, or you might want to have that on both. At the end of the day, that is the only rule in drawing. All good decisions are aesthetic decisions. I mean, we're drawing, right? That's the only decisions to make. It's just what looks good. I don't care if something's right or not. I care if it looks good. All right, this all looks nice to me. Yeah, I think you're getting a really good handle on this perspective stuff. I want to see more of those simpler mannequins that are going to sell these gestures that you're doing here.
Okay, cool. I also did the range of motion.
Oh yeah, you put the oh nice, cool. Awesome. Great job. Yeah, these are tough to do. I had complaints about my drawings in the first place, so I do apologize about that. But I think like with this mannequin, I probably should have just done it simpler just to really emphasize that point rather than getting caught up. But it's looking really good. And those are great exercises. I mean, in the homework for this week, I also said to do it with the skeleton, so we can do even more range of motion stuff.
One question with the twist on this one. So right here, so where the overlap on the left side and the 3/4, I tried to add like, I don't know, a fold. Yeah, and that just looks wrong.
Yeah, so there's not all, you're not always going to see like a ton of folding on the surface anatomy, right? Because at the end of the day, we're doing mannequins, but we're drawing people. So like, hold on, wait, let me try to do this correctly. What am I doing right now? Totally lousing the whole thing up. Let me redo this. So you're saying this fold right here that we were doing looks weird when you're drawing.
Well, in the flour sack, it has that like where the top's going into the bottom a little bit and creates that little bunch up. And I tried to
Mhm.
replicate that on the mannequin, but on the mannequin it just looks contrived and not like it works. Whereas in the flour sack, it looks very natural and feels like it belongs.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think one thing you could do is just either subdue that so that it's not as extreme. Use things like overlapping just to sell that. So you don't even necessarily need to indicate those lines. Like if I just do this, where the legs are kind of going forward. You might get a little bit of folding here in the back. Actually, you see that a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
that's where I'm saying I struggled with getting the shape of that right, where it looked natural and not like, I don't know, somebody had surgery.
yeah. So that comes from studying, learning to draw in shape and studying from life. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the kind of thing like the mannequin's not going to show you. You have to just sort of see how people how that works in real life. Yeah, usually you're going to get, like, if I'm thinking me twisting, you're going to see folds here, maybe towards the like the obliques. You'll see a little bit. Yeah, you won't get so much in the abs. Yeah, all the tension would be leading up towards that right shoulder. Yeah, that's how I draw that. Yeah, and then yeah, I don't think you'd need too much in that front abs to show that twisting. You're right. I think it might feel a little bit weird. So that's the type of situation where it's like, okay, we got to look at figure reference to see how that looks.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
I think I had one more page of flour sacks that I uploaded in a separate thumbnail.
Separate. Let's see. Let's do a refresh.
It's no big deal if it's not there. Oh yeah, there it is. There are two in there.
All right. Oh, nice. You're really pushing the gestures here. Very, very nice.
So these are out of my head while the others were from reference.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll find that if you do things out of your head, that you'll be a little bit more adventurous. I find that as well. Sometimes when I'm working from reference, I tend to like stiffen things up a bit.
I guess that instinct to try to replicate the reference as opposed to create from the reference kind of
Yeah.
kicks in.
Anyway, I'm gonna call it for the day. I know we missed some. We can do another session, or we can meet up over the weekend. I'm just at this point, it's been almost 3 hours, so I'm a little bit tired, and I think I'm gonna have shitty advice. Whatchamacallit? I did this time. I went in chronological order though, so that's what happens. Yang was in 2 days ago. Gabe, 2 hours ago, during the class session.
Listen, man, I was late to the session. Had
2
some
minutes
errands
ago.
to-
2 minutes ago.
Man,
Who uploaded that 2 minutes ago?
That don't even say a name.
No name. 2 minutes ago. I don't have infinite stamina. I'm a human too, not a robot. But let's
I don't
have
know. Your videos on YouTube has a robot.
That's true. That's true. Very true. But surprisingly, people are different in real life than on YouTube. It's crazy.
I know.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Okay, I'm gonna make one comment here, which is just that this was one of the things I was concerned about with learning anatomy is the inclination to outline the anatomy on the figure. And we want to learn to emphasize, or our line weights will correspond to where the shadows will be the deepest. So like if I was going to draw that torso, pay attention to where shadows are being created. Right, so we don't necessarily need all that underside of the pec and all that. If you're going to indicate that, you got to do it lightly. Omission of detail is as important, if not more important, than the inclusion of detail. Omission will get you further. Try omitting details and see what happens. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'll try to do a weekend session so we can finish up.
Yeah, Mia's from
the rest
last
of
time as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I will get Mia's. We'll meet up on the weekend and we'll get Mia's as well.
Thank you.
No
Finding
problem.
these group sessions really helpful.
Hell yeah, that's why you guys pay the big bucks. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll get everybody. We'll make sure we get through all the work. So we'll meet up over the weekend. All right, y'all, and I'll record that one as well so you guys can see that. All right, take care, everybody.
Peace.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.
Have a good one.